Hey everyone, welcome back to What Makes This Game Awesome, where content is, occasionally, produced. Today we're going to be talking about Exit the Gungeon, a spin-off of my favourite roguelite, Enter the Gungeon. This is a really fun game and a really good example of how to do a sequel to such a great game, so let's talk about Exit the Gungeon and what makes this game awesome. So Exit the Gungeon is a side-on platforming twin-stick bullet hell released by Dodge Roll Studios in 2019 and 2020 for PC, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and Apple Arcade. It has a very similar vibe to Enter the Gungeon, sporting a similar art style, soundtrack, and overall concepts for the game. Since this game follows directly on from Enter the Gungeon, if you haven't already played that, I'd recommend checking out my review of it, just up there. It was one of my favourite videos to make, and that's probably why I've plugged it in like 6 other videos. The main premise of Exit the Gungeon is literally to do just that. After making it down to the bottom of the gungeon in Enter the Gungeon and killing the past, the entire gungeon has become a paradox, and now you need to leave by taking a bunch of elevators all the way to the top before it crumbles. All the way, a ton of gun-related enemies are shooting red bullets at you, and you have to avoid these to keep your very limited life above 0. At any time, you can also shoot a blank, which clears up all the bullets on screen, but you only get a few of these, so you have to be really sparing. At first glance, this game seems very similar to Enter the Gungeon, but the few differences change up the gameplay a lot. Since this game is side-on, you can now jump, vertical dodge roll, out of the way of bullets. Once you jump, the entire time you're airborne lets you pass through bullets, which is actually quite a long time compared to the regular dodge roll, which you can also do. While this makes dodging bullets slightly easier, it means that 1, the game throws more enemies at you, and 2, you now have a lot more hectic movement, with the lovely introduction of being able to fall. On top of this, the sorceress also blesses your gun, giving it infinite ammo, but making it change form pretty regularly. This means you're playing a constant gun game, and never know what you're gonna get next. By killing enemies and not taking damage, you can rack up a high combo level, and the higher this level, the more powerful forms your gun will take. If you're a fan of the original Gungeon's gun collection, you can also switch game modes to Arsenal mode, which allows you to collect extra guns on top of the blessed one. This change actually makes a huge difference, and the effect the combos have on your gun made me get a lot more involved trying to keep it up than if it was just a score. Now, real quick, I just want to take a second to talk about the controls for the game, because in my opinion, the default controls aren't exactly ideal. This game can be played with a mouse and keyboard or a controller. I personally prefer a controller because you get more freedom with the twin sticks, but some people would prefer the accuracy of a mouse, and it definitely still is perfectly playable like that. However, the default mappings of the game mean that you can't actually shoot and jump at the same time, and while the game doesn't physically let you do both, having to flick your finger between 2 buttons like that for 2 of the most important bits of the game is actually quite annoying. Thankfully, this game lets you completely customize all of the mappings, and so I found that mapping jump to a trigger instead of a button really fixed that, but I thought it's just worth mentioning because for the first few hours of the game, I was really struggling with the controls. Each of the Gungeoneers start with the same elevator, but after that, each has their own set of floors unique to that character, with each one having its own gimmick that makes it progressively harder. For example, the Convict has a floor where the ceiling rains down daggers every now and then, and the Pilot has a floor where platforms are held up by balloons that get popped every few seconds, keeping you moving around to avoid falling to your death. These floors really help to add variation to the game. On top of the small abilities that the Gungeoneers have, these unique floors make each one feel like a different experience and keep you coming back for more. I find that this game is actually faster to beat than Enter the Gungeon. It took me about 25 hours to complete a run in Enter the Gungeon, which I know is painfully long, but in this game, I beat a run after only 4 hours. Admittedly, that's probably partially because of the muscle memory from Enter the Gungeon, but still, I feel like this makes the variation even more important and much appreciated. As you ascend the Gungeon, in each stage you'll have the opportunity to buy items on the shopkeeper's floor. These floors give you a break from the chaos of the elevators, and provide a few other options depending on how your run is going. It lets you fight enemies in these dedicated enemy rooms, I'm not really sure what you'd call them, and also the shopkeeper sells a bunch of items you can use to restore your health, modify your bullets, or a bunch of other things. You can also buy a key from the rat, and this means you'll have an opportunity later in the run, if you can make it there, to free an NPC. There are 16 of these in-game, and all provide completely different things. For example, Patches and Mendy will occasionally show up in runs and let you heal to full health, and Ox and Cadence open up a new shop in the Breach to add items to the item pool in runs. All of these NPCs are funny and memorable characters, with some crossover and reference to the original Gungeon, and they really help to add some character to the game. I found myself wanting to play more just to see what each one did and had to say. The dialogue's really well written in the game as well, and has a couple of Easter eggs with character interactions too. Honestly, good dialogue is a detail I always appreciate in games, and it definitely definitely helps this game to feel more fun and keep your attention. At the end of each floor, you get faced off against one of the many bosses this game has to offer. These bosses, in true Gungeon fashion, are very difficult, even from the first floor, often filling the screen up with bullets and really testing your dodging and shooting timing. There are quite a few bosses in the game, so for the sake of time, and also to avoid too many spoilers, I'm just gonna cover a couple of my favorite early ones. Meowitzer is a newcomer that flies around the screen and dispenses bullets from the bottom of its ship while trying to crash into you. Can also drop balls of yarn from the top of the screen on a section of the elevator, and sometimes it will fire a stream of bullets horizontally across the screen. Now, as the bosses go, this one isn't actually as difficult to fight because it's only found in the first couple of floors, but I really like the design, and I also really like the fact that he's named Eggnian and has a grudge against Tonic the Sledge Dog. Honestly, S-tier writing. Gungamesh is one of the hardest early game bosses for me. He's a gunslinger with 4 arms, and his boss fight is really fast paced, with him being able to teleport all around the stage in between attacks, and some really hard to dodge patterns with bullets reflecting off walls and these rising and falling bullet waves. It's a really tough fight, and even after playing the game a decent amount, this is one of the fights I still lose worryingly often. All of the bosses in this game are pretty memorable, and almost all of them pose quite a significant challenge. Being able to get some bosses earlier or later than other runs also helps to keep the game feeling fresh and unexpected. Getting the wrong boss at the wrong time could mean you have to play completely differently to stay alive, and I really like this unpredictability. I will say that these bosses felt a little bit easier than Enter the Gungeon, but it's hard to directly compare the two because obviously I've played Enter the Gungeon before, and the jumping makes quite a big difference. Now, I'm going to be talking about the final boss and endgame content, so if you want to play this game yourself or you want to avoid spoilers, I'd recommend skipping to the time shown on screen now. There's genuinely loads to discover in this game, so if you're liking the look of it so far, I genuinely would recommend checking it out for yourself. Anyway, you've had your warning, let's go. After riding the elevator up through 4 floors, all of the Gungeoneers have an escape sequence where you ride a chaotic elevator swinging from side to side out of the Gungeon. This is one of the most frustrating stages in the game, with powered up gun nuts filling the screen with bullets, skeletons soaking up your bullets and sending these dense waves across the screen, and phaser spiders using frustrating web-shaped patterns to test your movement to the max. When you beat the level, you have now officially exited the Gungeon and blast out the top in the elevator. While you're flying through the air, you're cut off by the final boss, the Last Dragon, the reincarnated remains of the High Dragon from Enter the Gungeon. He's animated in a crispy low poly 3D, and honestly I really like this boss fight. The animation looks really cool and fits with the game's graphical style really well. Oh, and it's also really fucking hard. The first few times I did this fight, I ended up losing like 8 hearts. It's genuinely a really challenging fight to do without taking a lot of damage. The dragon has a lot of different attack types that he's constantly switching between, and almost all of these fill the screen with bullets, taking very unpredictable paths, making it really hard to dodge them, even with the vertical dodge roll. These also often have a mix of normal bullets and tracking bullets, giving you very little time to aim between dodging the bullet storm following you around. Some of his attacks even summon other enemies onto the stage, like these sniper shells, giving you even more to worry about on top of just staying alive. Eventually, after many painful runs, the dragon is defeated, and you smash down onto the floor outside of the Gungeon. From here, you can walk right and enter the ship to join the other Gungeoneers in truly leaving the Gungeon. Each of the Gungeoneers has their own unique dialogues here, and while in my opinion it's not quite as personalized as Enter the Gungeon's ending, I think this is a really cute sign-off to the game. It also plays a really cool remix of the Enter the Gungeon song, which I love. Honestly, the music in this game is incredible. Just like in Enter the Gungeon, they really didn't disappoint. After beating the Gungeon a few times, you'll also run into the option to buy bait on the final floor, which you can use to fight a secret final boss, Gloctopus. This is a really tough fight with a unique jet ski section against a massive gun-wielding octopus. I still actually haven't managed to beat Gloctopus yet, because this fight takes place right after the dragon, which means you've probably already lost a lot of health and resources to him. I really like that this boss is here as a final challenge though, and it keeps me doing runs to say I finally beat him. Overall, I really like the final bosses of this game, and while I think that it would have been cool to have a more customized ending like in Enter the Gungeon, I still think that it's a really difficult and satisfying way to end a run. So Exit the Gungeon is a great game overall. It changes enough from Enter the Gungeon to provide a challenge and feel fresh for new players, but still manages to keep the charm that the original really has. I think that having such memorable NPCs and well-written dialogue, even in the places where you really might not ever see it, like stuff in the Ammonomicon, I feel like that really sets Gungeon games apart from other games in this genre. I would say that this game is slightly easier than Enter the Gungeon, and from what I've seen online that seems to be the general consensus as well. But please don't take that the wrong way, it's still really challenging. It also feels more chaotic than Enter the Gungeon too. The blessed guns and the different routes for all of the Gungeoneers give the game a really unpredictable, fast-paced atmosphere to it, which I really like. So with all that taken into consideration, I'd rate Exit the Gungeon a 7.5 out of 10. It's definitely an above average game, just slightly below Enter the Gungeon. If you're a fan of the original Gungeon, I can instantly recommend this game to you, as it really keeps all of the charm that I've come to love. There's a lot of replay value because of all the unique routes, and while it's a little easier than Enter the Gungeon, you'll still find a challenge in this game, with more difficult modes unlockable for the absolute chads among you. I really like the side-on twin-stick platformer style of this game, and I definitely want to try more games like that, but this game has very quickly climbed the list to be one of my favourite roguelites. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed, and if you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to see more stuff from the channel. Also, please let me know in the comments what you think of this game, or if there's any other games you want me to review. Also, make sure to check out my Twitter, link on screen now and in the description. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, so see you there.